What if the past had turned out differently?
The Green Bay Packers have won the Super Bowl.
I was told that playing in Green Bay was not an option.
With the 24th selection in the 2005 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Aaron Rodgers, quarterback, California.
And Majkowski appears hurt. Oh, Majkowski's in great pain, Ahmad.
And reliable sources now tell CBS Sports that Parcells is very close to accepting a Green Bay Packers offer.
Gentlemen, let me introduce to you the new head coach of the Green Bay Packers, Mr. Phil Bankston.
What would the past look like? What would the future look like? If. Okay, let's move on to the What If segment. Like I said, it's submitted by Twitter, and thanks everyone. We've gotten a ton of tweets and Facebook messages and some emails and even some YouTube comments about different What If segments. So thank you everyone who's submitted those, and we'll try our best to get to all of those. We're going to probably do What If on every other week once the season starts really rolling. Just because we're going to have a ton to talk about, obviously, especially with fantasy football coming up. So we'll try our best to get to as many of those as possible. But keep sending those, and if we keep getting a bunch, and they're all great ideas like they have been so far, maybe we'll do more than I just mentioned. But this week's What If topic was submitted via Twitter by JAbraham34. He writes, at Green and Gold Forever, what if Don Majkowski didn't get hurt? What if he started the whole 1992 season? Would we have flourished with Holmgren? 1991 was a continuation of a long string of bad health, bad play, and bad luck for Don Majkowski. The one-time Magic Man, who just 2 years earlier finished second in the NFL's most valuable player voting, was banged up and sitting on the bench as he watched former Bears quarterback Mike Tomczak play out the string on another losing campaign for the Green Bay Packers. Things couldn't get much worse. But things started to look better as 1992 began. On January 11th, San Francisco 49ers offensive coordinator Mike Holmgren was hired to replace Lindy Infante as head coach. While in San Francisco, Holmgren was in charge of one of the most powerful offenses of all time. He coached Hall of Famer Joe Montana to his best year as a pro in 1989, and was just coming off a 1991 campaign that saw two 49er quarterbacks, Steve Young and Steve Bono, finish ranked in the top 4 in the league in passer rating. One of the first things Holmgren decided when he came to Green Bay was that the quarterback job was Don Majkowski's to lose, but there certainly would be competition. Mike Tomczak led the team in passing in 1991, and in February, new Packers general manager Ron Wolf traded a first-round draft choice for the player he originally wanted to draft the year before when he was working for the New York Jets, quarterback Brett Favre. When camp arrived, Brett Favre was named the backup quarterback. The starting position would be a battle between Majkowski and Tomczak. Majkowski would win the job rather easily because Mike Tomczak never reported to training camp. He would hold out for 26 days until the team released him in the first round of preseason cuts. Majkowski would start opening day. Majkowski's 1992 campaign started off promising with a solid start in an overtime loss to the eventual division champion Minnesota Vikings. The next week in Tampa Bay, however, Majkowski struggled. He was replaced at halftime by Brett Favre, who didn't fare much better. The Packers were pounded by the Bucs 31-3, and Green Bay found themselves at the familiar position of 0-2. Holmgren would name Majkowski the Week 3 starter against the 2-0 Cincinnati Bengals at Lambeau Field. Angry about being benched the week before, Majkowski was out to prove he belonged as the starting quarterback. His third and final start of the 1992 season lasted 6 plays. Majkowski hurt his ankle and would leave the game. Brett Favre would enter the game and engineer a dramatic comeback that resulted in a 24-23 Packers win. And when Majkowski was ready to return later that season, Holmgren stuck with his gut and kept Favre as his starter despite a personal policy that a starter could not lose his job to injury. Favre would start every Packer game for the next 16 seasons and lead the team to 160 victories and a Super Bowl championship. Majkowski would spend the rest of his career in relative obscurity. He would start 8 more games the rest of his career for 2 different teams. In his final season in 1996, the Magic Man would return to Green Bay as the starter for the Detroit Lions. He would watch his former backup throw 4 touchdown passes, and the Lions were soundly beaten by Brett Favre and his eventual world champion teammates. But what if Don Majkowski hadn't gotten hurt? Would he have flourished under Mike Holmgren's system and returned to prominence, or would Brett Favre have eventually overtaken him anyways? What would the legacy be of both Favre and the Magic Man? What if Don Majkowski had not gotten hurt on September 20th, 1992? All right, so there's the history behind this topic. And, Matt, why don't you begin this time around and give us your thoughts on what you think might have happened if Don Majkowski had stayed healthy in 1992.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously, Majkowski probably would have been, continually starting throughout that season, but you kind of look at how things were going for him. Been banged up the last couple of years before that. He only threw 3 touchdowns and 8 picks in 91, so the year before he got hurt. So, I mean, you look at Brett Favre coming in, having an awesome game against the Bengals there after the injury, winning the game, and it seems to me that this is kind of when Brett started to create all of that magic. So, 92 he comes in. If Majkowski doesn't get hurt here, I think the biggest thing that happens is that maybe Favre doesn't quite have the leash that he ended up having. So Majkowski goes down, Favre comes in, plays great in 92. But then in 93 is kind of where he started to struggle a little bit then. So you wonder if he didn't, I think Majkowski probably would have ended up losing his job anyways. I just kind of feel like the franchise had sort of had enough. He had a really good season in 89, 27 touchdowns, 20 picks, threw for a ton of yards. But other than that, just wasn't really anything special. And so, I mean, I think he probably would have lost the job, whether it was that season or maybe the start of the 93 season. But then you look at Brett Favre coming in fresh in 93. I guess you don't really know how he's going to perform if he starts the season as the starter. So I guess in my opinion, I won't get quite to the conclusion yet. I'll let you talk. But I feel like maybe Favre's leash would have been a little bit shorter. But I feel like Favre probably would have ended up being the starter anyways eventually.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I think you make a lot of really good points. Don Majkowski is very interesting. I think in 1989, that's what people will remember him by up here, and rightfully so. That he was fantastic that year. Led the NFL in passing yardage, led also in completions, in a very, very solid year. When he comes back in 1990, however, he did get hurt in 1990, but it wasn't until the end of the season, still started 8 games. He held out. Rocky, only a 73.5 quarterback rating, which is still okay in 1990, but not that great. Passable. And then, like you said, in 1991, he was dreadful. 59 quarterback rating in 8 starts. Battled a lot of different injuries all year. And then in 1992, Mike Holmgren really liked him over their other quarterbacks. They had Blair Keel in camp, who had a few starts, didn't do a whole lot. They had Mike Tomczak, who had a reasonably successful late 1991 for the Packers. And, of course, they had Brett Favre in camp. And Majkowski was his opening day starter. He really struggled, though, in the first couple of games, which makes me think that ultimately in 92 they probably wouldn't have got off to that hot start, even with Brett Favre, who, let's be honest here, even though people talk about how it was a growth and it took him forever and then all of a sudden he blossomed in 94 and 95, if you compare him to the rest of the league, he was a Pro Bowler in both 1992 and 93, where in 93 he maybe didn't deserve it, but in 1992 he certainly did. He was near the top of the league in completion percentage. Actually, his percentage that year would be the highest of his career up until 2007. He was among the league leaders in passing yardage, in touchdowns with 18, and had one of the lower interception percentages in the entire league, only through 13 that year. Made the Pro Bowl roster. They won that game, a comeback against Cincinnati, who was 2-0 at the time, and then they took on Bill Cowher's 3-0 Pittsburgh Steelers, and Favre played very solid in that game. He didn't turn the ball over. The Packers won, and they got off to a 2-2 start, which now sounds like a horrible start. For the 92 Packers, that was something to be proud of. They fall back. They have a few losses in a row to fall to 2-5. But at that point, by the time Majkowski was ready to come back, they had decided that Brett Favre was going to be our guy because he had had a comeback. He had beaten the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that if Majkowski was able to stay healthy through that game, they would have lost to Cincinnati in all likelihood. They probably don't beat Pittsburgh, who was a very good team, ended up being the 2 seed in the AFC that year and a perennial AFC championship contender throughout the next 5 years. I think that Majkowski either can't stave off Favre, or if he does, he completes the season and then he's released anyways after the season is over. I don't think with as much confidence as Ron Wolf had in Brett Favre, and the price they paid to get him. Remember, Brett Favre wasn't Tom Brady, and he wasn't a 6th-round draft choice. He was traded for a first-round draft pick that the team could have desperately used for as limited they were in so many positions back then. I think Brett Favre is the starter in 1993, regardless of what Don Majkowski does. I think if Majkowski's in, that team had a moderately good defense, passable offense, but without Favre and Sterling Sharp, obviously Majkowski and Sterling Sharp had some chemistry together. But I think that without Brett Favre, that 92 Packer team is 7-9, 6-10. I don't think they're 9-7 without Brett Favre, to be perfectly honest with you. He played very, very well. So I think that Majkowski stays healthy, and I know I'm rushing to my conclusion, but I'll let you get to yours. If Majkowski plays in 1992, he has somewhat of a successful campaign, maybe has a bigger splash in free agency than he ultimately had in 93, signing as a backup for Indianapolis. Maybe it helps his career, but for the Packers, I think he's released, and Brett Favre, regardless of what Majkowski does, is going to be your starter in 1993.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, do you want to go ahead and say what you think, what kind of ramifications that might have down the road, or?
Sure. Yeah, I think the ramifications for that would be pretty similar to what they are. Maybe it takes Brett Favre a little bit longer to mature, but the team had also matured too as well. In 93, the team was better than Favre was. In 94, Favre was better than the team was. In 95, they kind of matured together. The defense was recovering from some of the woes they had in 94. Brett was phenomenal, as he had been in the second half of 1994. Favre, of course, won the MVP in 1995. I think maybe 94 is more like 95, or vice versa, where maybe they're about 9-7 in 93, about 9-7 in 94, and maybe in 95 they aren't quite ready to have a lead in the NFC Championship game in the fourth quarter at Dallas like they did. So maybe they struggle, don't get out of the second round. I still think, though, it would have turned enough heads to get people in 1996, especially with Reggie White really doing the hard sell to get a lot of guys here like Keith Jackson and Eugene Robinson, since he really started to see the writing on the wall. And I still think in 96 or 97, one of those 2 years, they still win the Super Bowl.
Okay, yeah, and I agree with most of that. I'll go back to kind of where you left off before with the Majkowski. I agree that they probably would have either put Favre in towards the end of the season if they're struggling, or he probably would have been the starter in 93. Because, like you said, they invested a first-round pick in him. He was going to get his chance. So, like you said, the development might be a little further back. So I think that 94 and 95, like you said, might kind of fluctuate a little bit. So, I mean, we didn't make a Super Bowl run until 95. So he still has those, 2-3 years to kind of develop into what he's become. So maybe we aren't in the NFC Championship game in 95. And we don't come into 96 as pretty much, the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl. Maybe a little bit more of a dark horse, but I think that team was still so good. And I don't really think, like you said, Reggie White bringing guys in or helping bring guys in, and the way that Ron Wolf was, running the show, I think we still have to be the favorites in 96. So, again, I don't think too much is going to change. I think, yeah, like you said, maybe Majkowski gets a bigger contract, but at the end of the season, if he does finish, decently. But, I mean, just for argument's sake, I agree with you. I pretty much feel like everything would go down about the same, maybe just a few differences in records and maybe 94, 95. But, what if Majkowski does stick around in 93? I mean, do you think that Favre probably just beats him out that year, too, during the season, and maybe we're just, another year behind, or what?
Well, that's tough to say. I think he wasn't really given a fair chance to compete in 92, so I really can't say how close they really were. I actually have a preseason game from 1992, and I haven't seen it in years, but if I remember correctly, Favre's first pass in his first preseason game for the Packers is a pick six, fittingly. But Majkowski was not very good either, so I think he probably does beat him out in 1993. I think what we're kind of talking about here, maybe that we could have a chance to speak about, is the NFL, when they tell the story of Brett Favre, they like to tell this narrative about how this was this young gunslinger with shades of talent, but he was mistake-prone and he did all these kind of things, and Mike Holmgren had to put the reins on him and show him the way, and then he blossomed into this superstar, which overall is kind of true, but I think that's incredibly simplistic. Favre was good right out the gate. If you look at his contemporaries, I mean, even in 1993 when he struggled, maybe he has the same 93 season, throws I'm looking at it right now. He's got 61% completion percentage, 19 touchdowns, 24 interceptions. Well, I'm looking, that's a 72 quarterback rating. Warren Moon, who led a 12-4 Houston Oilers team, went to the Pro Bowl. His season was 58% completion, 21 touchdowns, 21 interceptions. This guy's a Pro Bowler. Boomer Esiason went to the Pro Bowl. 61% completion percentage, 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. That's a 84 quarterback rating, so a little bit better than Brett Favre. So it's not like his 24 interceptions was disastrous. Compared to his contemporaries, it wasn't that far off the pace. It was a little higher. As a matter of fact, he had 4 interceptions in the last game of the year against Detroit when he really wasn't playing very well. So I don't think he played as disastrously as the old NFL Films narrative likes to suggest. He was pretty much, when you compare him to the people in his time, he was pretty much an elite quarterback from that first time he took a snap against the Cincinnati Bengals.
So, yeah, according to the NFL Films and, Kevin Bacon on Favre Forever, they make this Majkowski injury into being, the chance that Favre got. But according to us, regardless if he got injured or not, we think that, Favre's legacy basically ends up pretty much the same then.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay, so that wraps up another edition of What If, and we'll want to thank Jay Abraham34 again for his submission of this topic on Twitter. Everybody, please continue to give us all your great ideas. We have a bunch of other ones that we want to get to shortly from others on Twitter and on YouTube and our Facebook page. And if you haven't been following us or don't know how to reach us on those different media sites, you can go to Twitter. That's Green Gold Forever on Twitter. The word green, the word gold, the number 4, the word ever. You can also go to our Facebook page, Green and Gold Forever Podcast, where you can interact with us. And Matt's going to be doing some updates during games, where I'll be doing updates on Twitter, so you can kind of interact with us during the games if that's something you care to do. You can also go to our email address, which is greenandgoldpodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to our YouTube page, which is Green Gold number 4, the word ever, same as our Twitter handle, where you can hear past segments from the show and also get a segment-by-segment breakdown of the complete show every week it comes out. So let us know what you think about anything, and also keep pumping in those what-if topics, and give us your opinions on different things going on with the Packers. We'll have a chance to read them. And actually, we did post a question on our Facebook page today that we got a response from, so Matt will be able to share that with us.
Okay, yeah, so Caleb had just posted on what we had said, where we just wanted to get some thoughts about the preseason so far, thoughts about the game. So Caleb was the one who posted on it, kind of agreed with a lot of what we said, said the refs kind of stunk, which we ranted about a little bit, so can't disagree there. Said that he really wants to see the starting D, which I look forward to too. And he also says that he can't wait to see Tyler get some more reps because he liked what he saw, and you kind of agreed with him there too. So, yeah, I would just say to our fans, feel free to post on, Facebook and Twitter. If you comment on, just your opinions and thoughts, you're likely going to get in the show. So I would definitely recommend doing that.
Yeah, definitely. So we'd love to hear from you, and hopefully we can incorporate that into our next episode, which should be about a week from today. You should look around Tuesday morning, late Monday night is when we're going to try to post all of these. I know that's a long time to wait after the preseason games, but they'll be much more timely during the regular season. So if you look for us every Monday night, Tuesday morning, we should have a new episode there for you to listen to. So for Matt out in La Crosse, I'm Eric in Oshkosh, and thank you very much for listening, and the season has begun, folks. Let's enjoy it.